This is a quick intro, part one to using or doing kinetic typography inside of Flash. This is CS4 that we're using a Flash. I am using the classic setup under Workspace. Hopefully this will make some sense. And I'm just going to show you the methodology of getting things started and set up. I've got myself a quote that I want to turn into kinetic typography. I've gone ahead and I've typed all this together and I've tried to arrange the size of these things just right. And I've also gone ahead and I've turned these elements into symbols already. And I just wanted to show you that setup. Everything's happening in frame one right now, but I've got, for instance, the word fact turned into a symbol. I've rotated it, kind of got my typography in place. And when I named it a symbol, I also made sure I named it with the number 1 in front of the word so that all of these symbols, when they show up in the library, they'll show up in order. It just makes things a little more intuitive. I've also got an audio recording that I'm going to put underneath this thing. And what I wanted to show you is just how to very quickly set up the timeline so that it's ready to go for the tweening and starting to put the animation in place. So here it goes. Number 1, always make sure you have your own sound layer to keep the sound separate from everything else. And now selecting the sound layer and the sound cell, I'm just going to drag mining fact, that's the audio of what I'm recording, drag it into place, and I'm going to go over to 85, frame 85, and hit F5 just so I can actually see what I've got going on here. For layer 1, sure, you can go ahead and hit F5 and stretch that out just so you can see what's going on, but before we do any tweening, we've got the first rule of tweening down in that we've got all the objects we're going to animate as separate symbols. But the next thing that is crucial is each one of these symbols, I should say each one of these instances of a symbol, should have its own track. And right now all we have is layer 1. So here's the really easy way to split this up, especially if all of these things have already been converted. Better check this here for a sec. Come on back. Yep, everything's been converted into instances and symbols. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the keyframe. That selects every object, every element inside there. And then a right mouse click on any one of those objects will allow me to find this option called Distribute to Layers. And here's where the magic kicks in. I click that, and all those elements have been placed onto their own layer here. Unfortunately, it's sort of in a reverse intuitive thing, but if you want, you can move these things back into the correct order. Ontario is one on. Anyway, this is the big trick of just getting this thing set up. Kind of like this trick. Hope it pays off for you. But once we get these things a little more intuitively, then I can start animating these things. For instance, if I said, I don't want all these things showing up on the screen at once, I'll just move these things all over. And I want the word fact to show up first, so maybe I'll put it over there. And if I wanted to have fact kind of come slamming in there, I can now move on to my next bits of tweening. By the way, notice in the library, nothing has changed there. I don't want any fake tween type stuff showing up, any garbage showing up in there. So if I want to animate this, and by the way, I'm using classic tweening, not the newer tweening, just to keep things compatible with old lessons and tutorials. I'm going to hit F6 now, and now I'm creating the third rule of tweening. I've got things as a symbol, that's 1. I've got things in their own layer, that's 2. 3 is I've got bookends. Rule 3, I've got bookends that are identical. These keyframes have the exact same instance in it, so now I can create a classic tween, and now I can do other things. Now that I know where everything's going to land, I'm going to take this first instance, and I'm going to make it stupid big like this. And if I tested my animation, it would just very simply look like that. I've got the typography and I got a little animation, but naturally I'm going to do an awful lot more work. Hope that helps. See you in part 2.